Hi there. Great news. HBO just officially confirmed that Game of Thrones music composer Ramin Djawadi will return to score the prequel series, House of the Dragon. This is amazing. Uh, Fans found out by checking his online CV, and then within a single day it was circulating all over the internet through all the big news sites. So HBO basically just went, okay, cat's out of the bag, we might as well confirm it. So then they went to their official Twitter and announced on their channel, yes, Ramin is officially coming back. And here you see on screen, he retweeted it. So this isn't rumor or anything. It's all officially announced out in public. This is great, and I don't have much more to add to that because we all know him for 8 years. Thinking on that, it's weird for me that we had 8 seasons with this guy. He's amazing. He has a big career even outside of Game of Thrones. And after a decade, people still have trouble pronouncing his name. That you see, when I run into a crew member who I'm not sure how to pronounce their name, I take the all of 5 minutes needed to look up a clip of them introducing themselves on YouTube. So here's that.
Hi guys, I'm Ramin Djawadi, composer of Game of Thrones and Westworld.
So you see it's pronounced Ramin Djawadi, not Djawadi. Djawadi, like the Star Wars creature, Jawa. I've seen people doing all variations on that. I have not too long ago seen people calling him Raymond Djawadi or Raymond D. Djawadi. And all people just, if you're that confused, why didn't you look it up before you started recording? Like how the Mandalorian Star Wars show, the main character's name is Din Djarin, spelled with a silent D at the beginning of Djarin. It's silent. And I've seen this with other people, like a lot of people trip over Miguel Sapochnik, even though he's one of the major directors on the show. And it's not as if we don't have video clips of him introducing himself. And other people, like even Benioff and Weiss, will go, well, we were talking to Miguel Sapochnik. It's a name that comes up in videos, so I just checked how he says it. And just, why don't people think to check that? Because, I want to get his name right the first time. So I'm doing stuff on crewmen like this. I have to look up, the costume designer's French. She pronounces it Janie Tamim instead of guessing the pronunciation based on the spelling. A little bit about his background, of why is his name like that. It's a Persian name because his father is Iranian and his mother is German, but he was born and raised in Germany. So that's how he got that Iranian-style name. I'm never going to push anyone on this, but from the clips I've seen, I know, because he speaks fluent English, but with the German in there, I'm not sure if he pronounces it almost as Javadi, the whole German W for V thing. I don't know. I'm not so strict. I'm going to push people on that of how to pronounce his name. Sticking close to how it's spelled, I'm going to say Jawadi. I'm not going to be strict about the V thing unless he ever makes a point of that. I don't know. So we all know him already. His stuff from Game of Thrones alone would be enough to convince us how great he is. But a little bit of background. He was actually a protege working under Hans Zimmer for a while. He collaborated with Zimmer on Pirates of the Caribbean 1, Curse of the Black Pearl, amazing soundtrack. He worked under Zimmer on Batman Begins. And he's worked on a lot of things. He made the theme song for Iron Man 1, kickstarting the MCU. And as it turns out, Jawadi's going to return to the MCU soon. He's finally coming back to it after all that time. He only did the first one for Iron Man 1. He's coming back to do the score for The Eternals, which is going to be a big new part of Phase 4. And I said in my last video that Benjamin Ip, the new costume concept artist, he's also working on The Eternals. So, oh, cool, they're collaborating on something. So he's done and will keep doing MCU stuff. A lot of work with Zimmer. He has a career outside of Benioff and Weiss and the local stuff they hired up. No, he's a world-scale composer on things. And great to have him. He's amazing. The amount of work he put into this. And I'm not going to go into this too much because I yell about it in so many other videos. I want to keep this short. That I feel so bad about all of the world level talent that went into making Game of Thrones that was squandered and wasted by the bad writing. Not just the acting, but I mean like the costuming or the props makers, the artistry. And you saw from behind the scenes videos like the Last Watch documentary, I have clips of that on my channel, how much people were just slaving away building these, like building a full castle with sculptures and artwork and it's beautiful work, and it was barely used, or oh yeah, or it was used in a terrible episode. I mean, or the stunt work on top of that. Uh, Case in point, like the Long Night episode in season 8, where you could barely see anything, even when it was bright enough. It's like these battle tactics make no sense. The story is absurd. And that was people filming 60 days and night shoots and all this grueling stunt work, and they had to build trebuchets. They built that damn trench. They furnished with tapestries, everything, and the props in the library all went to waste. And this isn't just a season 8 thing, of course. It's going back through season 5. Someone like had to build all the sets in Dorne, or the Bolton storyline, or like the White Hunt, where all the millions of dollars on dragon CGI that were wasted on this zipping around the continent in a single hour stuff. But with the Long Night episode, you couldn't see anything. It was absurd, and Arya killing the Night King. Djawadi won an Emmy Award for the musical score of that episode. And deservedly so. If you listen to the soundtrack for that whole episode in isolation, this is amazing work, and he's planning out leitmotifs for every character. And just in terms of tension building, he's doing what he could. But we've said this time and time again that everything else was trying to lift up the bad writing. That was the one thing, and they kept acting like, no, it's other problems. Oh, fans are toxic. We're not toxic fandom. We lay the blame squarely on the bad writers who wouldn't even have a full writing staff. We don't blame the actors or the costumers or the props makers or the musical score. You think we turned on them after Long Night because of the musical score? No, that's what we love. There's musical themes in this show that are right up there with Howard Shore's Lord of the Rings. I mean, brilliant stuff. Like the Greyjoy theme is probably my favorite out of all of them. Because there wasn't really a Targaryen theme. There was a Daenerys theme, which fit her, I guess, but there wasn't, because there aren't any other Targaryens. But like the Greyjoy theme, the Stark theme, and really emotional stuff. And then there were points like in season 7 where, they're trying to manipulate us by like having Maisie Williams in an Arya costume striking a pose and saying not today, and you're just going back to old catchphrases, or having Arya do something really stupid and then play the Stark theme that we've all loved since seasons 1 and 2, and you're just pushing it to try to rest on your laurels of, remember when you used to like us for stuff we did in season 3 with the Stark theme. But that isn't the music composer's fault. So mixed feelings on that everything was carried by this world-class production despite the bad writing. And when people ask about continuity with Game of Thrones, it doesn't really matter because it's a prequel anyway, but this is a hard concept. I'm not concerned that, hooray, we have Djawadi back, because it'll sound like the same musical world as Game of Thrones. I have said this before. I am functionally moving forward thinking that we'll get a reboot in 20 years. That I compare this directly to the X-Men franchise. When X-Men 3 was terrible, or even now they're going to reboot it again for the MCU. We'll see how they do that. It's just, I don't think this is the only Dark Phoenix story we're ever going to get. We've had 2 failed Dark Phoenix stories already. I just shrug and go, it's nice to have some callbacks. I don't. If you're making a new X-Men for the MCU, it doesn't need to entirely fit with the early 2000s X-Men. But you should reuse the X-Men cartoon theme from the 90s because it's a goddamn classic. You know, I mean, because it's good. So I'm not happy that Djawadi is back because hooray, this will make it fit with Game of Thrones as one big continuity. I see this as a soft reboot, but by picking and choosing the best from the original, and talk about this in the comments, I hope it gets across. I want them to show up, Benioff and Weiss, to show that with other writers on a prequel era, if we get back as many of the behind-the-scenes staff as possible, just to show it wasn't us, it was you crazy writers. You know, that Djawadi is so great. They need to have him back. It has nothing for me to do. For me, it has nothing to do with tying it into the original series. Though I view when we eventually get a reboot, it'll be like a distillation of everything that worked in the first show, seeing Martin's world in live action, removing all the Benioff and Weiss parts, but picking out the best, because this is more ours than it is yours, Benioff. That this is something that, I'll leave it as the phrase is, it succeeded in spite of him, not because of him, and I want to show that by everyone else going on and succeeding without him. And like Deborah Riley didn't come back as a production designer, and a lot of the other producers and set builders were local people in Northern Ireland, and they're not going back to Northern Ireland. But then again, they are filming in Spain again. It'll be weird if we see some of the same line producers from there. I don't know. But right now, Djawadi is the big behind-the-scenes person who is returning. For all we know, there might be concept artists who might be returning, or some of the special effects shops may or may not return. But in terms of other things I can think of, the costumer is going to be different, the production designer is going to be different. This is one of the top tier things you can think of something returning that we loved about Game of Thrones in its heyday when it was still close to the books, is this amazing musical score. That when we think, oh man, it has such a good soundtrack, I keep humming the theme song. What does that have to do with Benioff? He didn't make the amazing theme song. Djawadi made it. So I'm just happy he's back, and that's the first part is just the difficult thing of, well, he's coming back, but I don't care if it's tying it in with the original show. I want him back because he's amazing. And it'll be Game of Thrones done the right way. As if we get a second chance. Does that make sense? The one issue I did want to bring up, looking through his video clips to prepare for this video and check his pronunciation, there was one of the behind-the-scenes videos I'll link below. He was explaining how he came up with leitmotifs for every character, and he made a big point that made a lot of sense that I didn't think of at first. And I want you to discuss this in the comments, because I look forward to, there's no right answers to it. He said he made it a big point that in season 1, he self-consciously didn't make an individual theme for every single character. Because in his words, it would have just gotten lost in the shuffle. That if you go back and check, Arya doesn't get a distinct leitmotif, a distinct theme, until season 2. Theon doesn't get a distinct leitmotif until season 2. That in season 1, when Arya's doing things, she just uses the generic Stark theme. And Theon really only came into his own as a character in season 2. That's how the books and the show were structured, that they'd introduce a character, but they wouldn't become important until the next season, that they'd layer them in gradually. Like, you meet Loras, and then you meet his sister Marjorie in the next season, and they gradually get more important. Like, Podrick Payne even was like a total background character in season 2, who just got more speaking lines. So Theon is a ideal case that I met a lot of people who didn't really know who he was after season 1. He just seemed like one of Robb's friends, even though they tried to explain what the Greyjoy Rebellion was. But season 2, it opened up so much, and he was carrying his entire story arc. Because in the first book, he isn't a POV character. Then Theon becomes a POV character in the second book. So just Djawadi worked it out that it makes more sense to hold off on this character having his own theme until he gets his own storylines focusing on him in season 2, which is when we got that gorgeous Greyjoy theme for Theon and for the other Greyjoys as well. And he said it would have gone to waste if I crammed it in season 1, because people be like, who the heck is Theon? So he made this big point that introducing leitmotifs is not that different from like how writing on a first season would go. You don't put everything in at once because you have to introduce them one at a time. And you start broad and then intentionally hold off on that. So the question I have for all of you for the comments for House of the Dragon is similar to Theon and Arya. Who are characters who appear in The Rogue Prince, who logically would be in season 1, who should have a theme song, or a leitmotif, and who shouldn't? I mean, logically, the ones who should are the main starring cast members like Rhaenyra, Alicent, Daemon. They should have their own leitmotif. But who are other characters who would probably be in it that we might want to hold off on giving them a theme because they become more prominent later? Of course, some of the younger characters haven't even been born yet, but from looking at the casting sheets, Mysaria, who's Daemon's spymaster / sometimes lover, she'll probably be in season 1 if the casting reports are accurate. I don't think they should give her a leitmotif in season 1 because you wouldn't know. It gives away that she'll become an important character, that she's a minor character now. Or, oh, of course, Larry Clubfoot. Larry Clubfoot, the future head of House Strong and spy master for Aegon II. He starts out as a relatively minor background character in Rogue Prince. So a lot like Theon, you wouldn't give him a theme in season 1. You should hold off on that until later. I mean, it's sort of like how should Littlefinger have had a really ominous theme song the moment he was introduced? Well, that kind of tips your hand that he's the bad guy. So you want to hold off on that until later. So I can see that, or some of the other major characters on both sides in the war, or I think logically the younger versions of the Lannisters, like Tyland, would be in the background in season 1 just to set them up, and he's kind of an important character later, but he wouldn't have a leitmotif. So who are characters who you think will be in season 1, characters from Rogue Prince who will probably be in it, who should have a leitmotif, and who should you hold off on giving a leitmotif because they'd only get lost in the shuffle because they're not as important of a character yet? And this is an open question with no right answers. I'm just interested in what you guys have to say. So I'm really pumped for Djawadi is back, and for once, something going right.